Welcome, everybody. It's number 8 of Reiki Shamanic Tips Stories for Challenging Times. And I'm Rose DeDan, Wild Reiki and Shamanic Healing. I am a Reiki Master Teacher, Shamanic practitioner in the High Andes Peruvian tradition, as well as an animal communicator. And today I'm going to focus on Reiki stories, creating balance in your life and animal healing. And this isn't so much of a tips as it is inspirational, perhaps for those of you who already are Reiki practitioners, or maybe more information for those of you who are curious about Reiki. So perhaps you've heard about Reiki in the news, from a family member or a friend, but maybe you don't really know what it is. Or perhaps you've never heard of Reiki at all before. Reiki is a non-invasive form of energy healing that balances the body mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And I'm passionate about Reiki and its benefits for animals and people, and love sharing my passion with others because Reiki literally changed my life. I grew up in a dysfunctional family, as I know a lot of people have. I had depression and suicidal tendencies when I was a teenager, and I kind of coped with all that by just shutting down my emotions and kind of going through the motions of life. By the time I reached my mid-30s, which is when I know a lot of people talk about having a midlife crisis, I really felt like my life lacked meaning and purpose. And it really felt important to do something about that because I didn't have a good reason to get up in the morning. So I started investigating things and volunteering and, just checking out a lot of different things, and nothing felt right. And then one day I read an article that someone I knew had written about her experiences taking a Reiki class, which, I had heard about it. I had experienced it upon a couple of occasions. But something about this article really spoke to me, and I think it was more a matter of the timing was just right for the message for the energy to kind of percolate through. So I ended up finding a teacher that literally was 6 blocks from me. The universe made it easy. And I showed up for class with no particular agenda, just an open mind. And it was there that I experienced the Reiki attunements. Now, there's a lot of books available on Reiki. A lot of, people have written very good books. The thing is, you can't learn Reiki from a book because of the attunement process. It's an energetic transmission from the teacher to the student that opens up the student's energy channels and connects them up to what we call the universal life force energy, or Reiki. It is literally the energy of all that is, so it's limitless. It means that when you study Reiki and you offer healing to yourself or to others, you're not using your own energy. You're tapping into all that is. So the attunements, I had amazing experiences in the attunement process, and I will say that this is not necessarily everybody's experience, okay? This is my personal experience. I had reached crisis, critical mass, whatever in my life. And the energy took the opportunity to basically blow open my doors. And I had a very profound experience. First of all, I could feel the energy running through my body, coming out of my hands. And I was like, wow, this is real. I hadn't thought it wasn't real, but, there it was. The reality that I couldn't turn away from. And I also knew it. Literally in that moment, I had what people call an epiphany. All of a sudden, I knew to the deepest part of my soul that all my life I'd wanted to be a healer, and that I would work with animals. So it was a huge turning point in my life. And it did uh, enable me to, over time, with my daily self Reiki practice, as well as, the attunements are powerfully healing as well. I began to see the fog began to lift, the heavy energy, the depression, and I began to see my life with more clarity and my path with more clarity. And so the more I did my daily self Reiki, the more benefit I derived. And of course, then I was able to hold space better for offering healing to others. And initially, I opened my healing practice for a focus on animals, which in 1995-96 was not common. I'm delighted to see how much more common it's become, because it means the animals get the benefits. But those days, we didn't even have the internet, so the animals, however, taught me that people need healing too. So these days, my practice consists of healing sessions for animals and people. And of course, I teach classes. So daily self Reiki has helped to keep me balanced mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, guiding my feet on following my heart's path, if you will, being the best I can be. So it's also helpful for keeping you healthy and for emergencies. So I have a story for you that was actually shared with me by, one of my students. I truly feel that I have the best job in the world, because I can share what I love most with my students and clients, and I enjoy the additional perk of hearing wonderful stories about the benefits they receive. So this story is a true story from a student, Lisa Craig in Australia, who had just received her Reiki 1 attunement in class. And she said, I didn't plan on having to use Reiki for an emergency right after the attunement. However, life happened. My little 5-year-old friend was in the bath, and as I leant down to gather her bath toys, she decided to stand on the edge of the slippery bath. I was momentarily distracted, and she somehow pulled an artwork off the wall, which banged my head and shattered into the bath with lots of glass. So when I got her out of the bath, she says, she had 2 glass cuts which were bleeding, and I had a very large lump forming on my head. It was a bit of a shambles, since she was crying and scared, and I was seeing stars. Lisa says, I wrapped her leg in a towel and we both lay down on the bed, and I had one hand on my head and one hand on her leg. I did Reiki on both of us. She stopped crying within a minute and lay there quietly for the rest of the time. After 10 minutes, she says, we both tenderly inspected our injuries. Her cuts had stopped bleeding and were starting to seal, and my lump had stopped swelling. Lisa says she's 5 and very in tune. And later in the day, she said to me, you're the only person I know who has magic hands. So Reiki is very helpful for emergencies. Life happens at home, especially with children. And animals love Reiki too. Back when I was just a wee Reiki lass, just starting out, I had a great encounter with a horse named Picasso. And when I met him, I discovered why he was named after the famous artist, because one side of Picasso's face was brown with a brown eye, and the other half was white with a blue eye. And he was quite striking looking. And as I was about to discover, he had quite the personality too. So his person shared with us, I was there with another Reiki practitioner, that Picasso was suffering from a painful hoof problem, and asked if we would do some Reiki energy healing with him. So he was secured in the cross ties, which for those of you who may not be horse people means there's a clip that goes to either side of his bridle, that goes to either side of the aisle in the stables. And so I took his left side, and the other Reiki practitioner took the right. And I crouched down, and I placed both of my hands on his left front hoof, and the energy began flowing very strongly. And I just kind of, settled into it. And after a little while, I noticed Picasso crossed his back legs, rather like a human would when relaxing. And I kind of looked at his person like, hey, what's all that about? And she said, he does that when he gets comfortable. Okay, good. He's enjoying the Reiki. A little more time passes, and I feel this heavy weight settle down on my shoulder. It was Picasso's head. He's now using my shoulder like a pillow. And I kind of wondered to myself how long the pillow would last, because horse heads are heavy. A little more time went by, and I peeked at Picasso, and he was now drooling copiously, which I had never seen a horse do. And I looked again at his person, and she said, oh, he does that when he gets really relaxed. Okay. So eventually the flow of energy slowed and stopped, and we stood up and said goodbye to Picasso. And as I was walking away, I heard a sound behind me. And when I turned around, I saw Picasso had stepped forward as far as he could in the cross ties, as far as they would allow, stretching his head towards me. He was straining to reach me. So I walked back to him and said, what? And that amazing, incredible horse laid his head over my shoulder and pulled me in for a hug. He was grateful for the Reiki. And he also showed no signs of limp. So for those of you who might be horse people, I've had students share stories with me that have horses, and they have said that in emergency situations where their horse is colicking, which for those of you who are not horse people is extremely dangerous and can be fatal if the vet doesn't get there in time. So they've shared that while waiting for the vet, or in situations where they couldn't get a vet to come, they have offered Reiki to the horse and gotten things moving again, and everything has returned to normal. So it's, I would never suggest that you use Reiki only in a lot of situations with animals or with people. It's good to blend Western with energy healing. It's very appropriate, especially for, some acute situations. But it blends very nicely, and for situations where you don't have access immediately in the moment, it can be something that you can rely on, something that you can offer, because we often feel helpless, want to help, and don't know what we can do. So I've got another animal story for you. I talk about, once you've taken Reiki, watch out. The animals love you even more. You become an animal Reiki magnet. So in my many years of practicing Reiki, I've been approached by many beings of vastly different species asking for energy healing, because the animals are very tuned into energy. They read us here, and they also read our external energy fields. So they have a tendency to know when you've got Reiki on tap. And if they're in need of it, they're not shy about asking. So on this particular occasion, it was summertime. It was the early evening, and I was sitting on the sidewalk weeding the edge of the flower bed when I heard this snuffling sound kind of behind me. And turning a little bit, I saw a woman who was pulling on the end of a flexi lead. On the other end of the lead was a brindle and white bulldog, who was built, so as they are, like a very compact Mack truck. And the bulldog had all four paw brakes on and was refusing to move past me. So I said hello to the person and also to the dog and offered my hand to the bulldog. And she didn't sniff just one of my hands. She shoved her face all the way into the palms of each of my somewhat dirty and very Reikified hands. And she was just like snuffling up the Reiki energy. So apparently I met with approval, and she, with a grunt, laid down next to me. And so while petting her, I engaged in conversation with the person who was walking her, who shared that she was dog sitting for her neighbor, so this wasn't her dog, and she was adopting a puppy in a few weeks. So as we talked, I became aware that the seated dog was inching herself closer and closer to me. And the next thing I see is that she's holding her left rear leg like way off the ground, with the foot like pointing skyward. And bulldogs don't have very long legs, so it's kind of like looking like a chicken drumstick, pointing up at the sky. So, I kind of looked at her like, and I wasn't getting her message, so she gave up all pretense of being subtle, and she pointed the toes of that quivering leg straight at me with this pleading expression on her face. And it was one of the moments where I dearly wished I had been able to take a photo, since words fail to do the experience justice. And I placed, both of my hands on either side of the offered leg, and I kind of heard her say, "At last." And there was this sigh of relief, and she rests her whole leg in my hand. And the dog walker said, "Oh, that's her surgery leg." And she explained that the dog had undergone surgery about 6 weeks before to make the grooves in her knee deeper so that she could walk more comfortably. And unfortunately, because of their breeding, bulldogs are prone to physical issues like that. So as my hands were there, I felt a little heat, in the leg, but overall it seemed to be healing nicely from my perspective. But obviously, a little Reiki does not go amiss. And the dog walker told me that the dog was going to be having the other knee done in a couple of weeks. And as I finished up offering Reiki for the dog's highest and best good, and thanked her for stopping by my outdoor office, the dog didn't want to leave. When she finally stood up, she tried to drag her walker to my front door. I could just imagine the horror on, my cat's faces if I decided to host a dog. So she was finally persuaded to resume her walk. At the time, I did wonder if after her second surgery, perhaps she would be dragging somebody back to my door. I don't know if she had the second surgery. I haven't seen her since. But so, Reiki has become one of the most popular healing modalities worldwide. It was relatively little known when I started back in 1995, thanks to the internet, and I think probably people sharing, as more and more people discover through experiencing Reiki for themselves or searching for something that seems to be missing or lacking from their lives. It's just grown exponentially. And in 2010, Dr. Oz increased Reiki's visibility vastly by naming it his number one alternative medicine secret for 2010. And nowadays, besides the benefits for family and personal use, Reiki is also offered in a number of prestigious human hospitals across the U.S., especially for hospice situations. It's now being offered many places for military veterans with PTSD. It's combined with massage, and other bodywork practices. And of course, I'm very happy to say it's making its appearance in veterinary practices, animal rescue shelters, dog grooming salons. I have one student who incorporates it into her swim therapy for dogs and has said it made a huge difference. So, I call Reiki the gift that keeps on giving, because after you take training, it's for your benefit, for your family's benefit, whether human or furry. It can be expanded, obviously, into an adjunct career, or just simply helping, coworkers. Well, maybe not right now, but this will pass this time, and we will resume something resembling perhaps the new normal for life. So, I'm just going to conclude here and say that I hope this inspires those of you who are Reiki practitioners to keep up your own personal practice, and perhaps, having opportunities to practice with others in your immediate family circle right now. But for those of you who may not be experienced in Reiki, haven't taken Reiki training, I'd like to say that I do teach teleclasses that are available worldwide, which makes it a perfect time, the absolutely perfect time to study Reiki at home, safely. I can promise you two things: that you will not be disappointed in the benefits the Reiki offers, the gift that keeps on giving, and that I invest all of my passion and my love for Reiki and my 25 years of experience practicing and teaching Reiki into support for my students. I do my very best also to make the classes fun, and there are lots and lots and lots of stories. So, if you'd like to join me on a Reiki journey, whether it's your first time taking Reiki or if you're looking for a Reiki refresher, you can visit my website at ReikiShamanic.com, and you can look under my calendar for current classes. But I also have a link underneath this video. For those of you who may be tuning in for the first time, I highly recommend looking at the Reiki. There's the first two videos, number 1 and number 2, will give you some important tips for energetic things that you can do to support yourself at this time at home. For those of you who might be Reiki level 2, it really shines at this time, because in the second level of Reiki, you can offer Reiki across distance, so you don't have to physically be present with someone, which of course right now, with social distancing and staying at home, makes Reiki very, very helpful to help support your friends and your family, as well as yourself. So, I'm going to wish you all a good day. Take care, everybody.